Hello. A more proper hello. Welcome to Word Balloon Academy 2021, presented by the Seneca College School of Creative Arts and Animation. My name is Miles Baker. I'm the executive director of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, and very excited to be presenting this session on grant writing with Lorena. Before I hand things off, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the original caretakers of the land that I am on, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Wendat peoples. I'm joining you today from my home, which is in territory that was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, Haudenosaunee, and allied nations. This area is also covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I make this acknowledgement as part of a long process in learning what it means to grow up, live, and make art on colonized lands. Going forward, TCAF is committed to increasing Indigenous voices and perspectives in our programming. And now I think we can get started with the real grant writing of it all. I've written many a grant in my time. TCAF definitely exists in its form today because of government funders, but there's so many ways to tackle it, and it can be such a intimidating amount of work to do. So I'm going to pass things off to Lorena for her part of this. All right, I'll see everybody in 1 second. Oh my gosh. All right, I forgot about one more important housekeeping thing. We are doing questions and answers, everybody. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of your corner there. Pop questions in there, and I'll gather them for the end. And if you require closed captioning, there is some of that. That functionality is also at the bottom there, as well as this program will be archived on our TCAF YouTube sometime next week with more proper captioning as well. That's it. Those are things. Now for you.
Okay, so welcome, everybody. Okay, terrific. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here, and thank you to Miles, and thank you to TCAF. So yeah, my name's Lorena. I'm a small comics creator from Toronto, and I decided to do a chat on grant writing because I was talking with people, and they really felt that it was this terrifying thing that you had to be like a really special person to do. Like you need to have like a mountain of Eisners and like the best project ever to even consider doing grant writing, and that's really not true. So so let's get started. I'll just sort of go over some tips on how to tackle it and how to wrap your brain around it in general, and then we'll do questions. So here we go. I'll just share my screen. Here we are. Okay, great. So let's go. Okay, so welcome. And I guess I'll start by saying, should you apply to get grants or not? Probably yes. So the whole point of grants and of these government agencies is to support the arts and to support creators. So it's not just to reward excellence. So if you're new, that's okay. They're meant for you to grow, and they're meant for you to get your career started. So it's probably still like worth it to apply, even if you're pretty fresh to comics in general. I think it's a really good way to build your skill set so that you know how to pitch your work, how to summarize it, so that you know how to make really good goals and plans to actually get a project done. And yeah, it's good for, later on if you're going to pitch to publishers, or if you want to table at conventions, if you can speak about your project in like a really effective way, that's always going to help you, even if you get rejected. And if you don't, it's money, and money is nice, and paying rent is nice. So and yeah, and lots of people get rejection starting out, so that's normal and that's okay. I feel like I really want to encourage you throughout this whole talk to just give it a try and not worry about having, you know, some failed attempts along the way. Okay, so you've decided to do a grant. So we're first going to go through some requirements that you might need, just to make sure that you can hit the ground running and like be ready to make a good case for yourself. So first of all, generally you're going to have to present your publishing history. So that means you need to prove you're a cartoonist. You need to prove you're what they think, how they define like a professional artist. So for the literary arts, which is what covers comics, at least in Canada as a whole, you need to have some small, well, this is an either or, you don't need all of these. You need to have some indie publications you've been paid for. It's okay if they're very small, even if you got paid like $1, that actually counts. So obviously, you know, don't do work that you hate. Definitely never ever work for free. But if you're doing something that's helping you grow and that has even a small honorarium, it might be worth it so that you can have it on your portfolio, so that you can access the granting system. So just something to consider. It's also good, you know, if you have a book that you know, have published that you get royalties from. Self-published books generally don't count. That falls under vanity presses, and so I don't know. It's a bit of a gray area. So yeah. So ideally, a small like an indie publisher or something. And for the Ontario Arts Council, the OAC, actually they allow you to apply if you're a self-publishing cartoonist. So there's more reading to do. I won't like bog the talk down with it, but you may have to tell folks how many zines you've sold or how many books you've sold, for how much, how long they are, like what kind of money you've made from them, and that kind of thing. They just want to check that you're actually practicing as an artist, that you're not entirely new, basically. So yeah, so you do some small publications, you get ready. Something else you're gonna need is actually to have some support material. So you're gonna have to show comics that you've made before or stories you have written, because these grants fall under literary arts. You can actually use like stuff like short stories or fiction, even if you're pitching comics. If you're a writer, that's okay. Although you need to have some comics. And when you're picking what to show, like I say here, you want stuff that's recent. If you have stuff that's published, you want that. And ideally, you're picking stuff that's related to the project you're actually pitching. And that's because basically throughout the whole grant application, what you want to do is prove that you can deliver on the project that you're pitching. So, you know, you don't have to be Scott McCloud or like Osamu Tezuka or whatever. You just have to have whatever skill set it is you're saying you have, basically. Yeah. So having said all that, we can actually get on with it. So to actually put an application together, you're going to be asked for many of the same things over and over. The word count for those things may actually vary, but you'll be asked many of the same questions, you know, like who are you, what are you doing, that kind of thing. So overall, obviously, give yourself a lot of time. Usually, I would say like 3 weeks is nice, so you can just double check everything and be really sure when you hand things in. And so you have time to like read the guidelines and follow them to the letter like a crazy person. I think that's important because even if your idea is really, really good, you're also trying to prove that your delivery, your execution is going to be really good. So if you can come across as really professional, if you can have, you know, all your examples of your art in the right file format, named however they ask you to, and have everything just exactly the way they need it to be, it kind of shows that you're organized and sort of gives this good impression that you are going to do whatever it is that you are promising you're going to do. And overall, I said, please use really clear and really direct language. Don't be artistic. Don't be poetic. You will regret it. It will totally ruin it. So, you know, you're an artist. Comics are art. You're making art, but the grant application is not the place to sort of be, you know, really flowery with your language. So I think because I feel like if you're just discussing your idea, even if your idea is really good, you're sort of gambling that the jurors that are actually gonna evaluate your application, you're gambling that they have the same taste that you do. And that's actually, I mean, that's kind of a weird gamble. So you're a lot better off banking on really trying to prove that your execution is going to be really good and sort of that you know what you're doing, as opposed to just putting all your faith just into the idea itself. And because grants are handled together for like things like books and comics and like fiction and stuff like that, some of the people evaluating your applications are actually not going to know anything about comics. So that's worth considering, that you want to be very, very clear so that if someone who doesn't know what a webcomic is, for example, can picture exactly what you're doing and can see that it's a good idea, even if it's totally foreign to them. Okay, great. So I'm going to talk a bit about describing your project. So following in that clear language tip, I really think it's good to start with like a one sentence statement of what you're doing right off the bat. So I have some examples there, like writing and illustrating a 22-page comic issue about spy pandas to pitch to publishers, or a weekly online comic strip reviewing Toronto restaurants. Again, they might not know what a comic is. Make it easy for them. Or, you know, I'm creating a graphic novel for middle grade readers. A robot falls through a portal to the Wild West and goes on adventures. So I think something to know is, in one sentence, you're telling them the basic idea of what you're doing, but also hopefully you're telling them the format that you're working on, and maybe even telling them the audience that you're doing it for. So then as they read the rest of your pitch, you know, after this, you can have your paragraph where you tell them the story and you tell them, you know, sort of what you're excited about within the story. But then as they read that the whole time, they're gonna be picturing an actual comic they can hold in their hands, and it's gonna be concrete and not like vague or confusing at all. So that can only help you. So, okay. I guess I'm gonna carry on with the example, the last one, with the like cowboy robot thing. So let's say you're pitching your cowboy robot graphic novel, and you've told them like the basic plot and the format and audience. So you also want to say, you want to explain why you are the person to write this comic. So I said, maybe you can say, I know Western stories really well, and I have made other wonderful comics like, and then give them some of your previous work that young people really connected with. So again, if you pick your art examples to match what you're going to make, then the person reading that application is going to be able to go back and forth and go like, oh, wow, yeah, they do really good cowboy stuff, and it's all going to come together. So that's what you're trying to do. And so once you've done those things, I think it's also a good idea to explain why the story should exist. So out of all the stories in the world, why this one? So I said, you know, Beep Boop, the robot cowboy, is a story about a new person figuring out who they are in the world. It will resonate with young readers and help them feel confident. It will introduce readers to history and engineering and show them how amazing this these disciplines can be. Obviously, it doesn't have to be that, but it's worth it for you to have a think about why it is that you're telling the story, why it is that you're trying to tell this story in particular. Maybe there's an issue that you really care about that you're putting forward. Maybe there's some visibility that you want to give to like an underrepresented group. Or, you know, it could be more technical. Maybe you want to make something that pushes the medium and is really experimental. And that's the kind of project that like a publisher might not want to fund readily. So like those are the kind of arguments that you can make. Right. And the other thing is, just as an extra note, some projects are time sensitive. So, you know, if you have a graphic novel about a pandemic, apply this year. Like, this is the moment for you. So think about things like that, you know. Great. So you've described your project. That's always something you're going to have to do. The other thing you're always going to be asked for is to write a bio. So to talk about yourself, which I'm sure everyone here loves to do and isn't worried about at all. I've heard a lot of cartoonists really worry about their bios and sort of not know how to talk about themselves. So generally, obviously, you want to say what your skill set is, like what you do. You want to talk a little bit about who you are. So what experiences do you have outside of comics that are linking you to this story, that make you want to tell this story? You know, again, are you part of a specific community? Do you have any sort of experience? And then, you know, same as before, describe like what you care about and what you're trying to do with your art. That can be a big question, and you don't have to be, you know, you don't have to say like, I'm gonna save the world with comics or anything like insane like that. But I think it's worth it for you as an artist to know if, you know, are you making comics because you love the technical medium? Are you doing it because you want to communicate a very important message to you? Are you doing it because you love superheroes and you want to work at Marvel? Those are all valid, and you should probably know which one applies to you. I mean, just because aside from grants and everything, if you know what you want out of your comics career, you're going to be able to make better choices, and you're going to know sort of when advice applies to you and when it doesn't, just because there's a lot of contradicting advice and stuff. So just, you know, grants aside or whatever, have a sit down and think about that. It's worth it. Great. So the key thing with your project pitch and your bio is that if you were to hold them side by side, there should be a connection. So the project that you're pitching should be a clear next step for the story of your bio. It should be very obvious. It's like, oh, this person has been on a journey and they're continuing this journey with this project. It should all sort of feel very cohesive. And as an extra note, if you're trying something new, that's also okay. But then you want to talk about how you arrived at the place you are artistically, and then, you know, what plans you have to succeed. So like, if you're doing your first book-length graphic novel, how are you spending your time? How are you going to make sure it gets done? Or like, what research are you going to do? Are you going to interview people? Are you going to do a whole bunch of reading? Yeah, just, it's okay if you're trying something new. It's not okay if you lose the thread of, you know, how this is part of your overall trajectory as an artist. So that's kind of something to think about. So I'll just make a quick note here. There's a couple other things you may be asked for. You may be asked for a timeline. So, you know, be honest about how long it takes you to draw and stuff. And then ask for more time. However long you think is going to take you to make your project, ask for at least a third more time, a half again as much. just nobody really cares if it takes you a long time to get a project done. And then you'll be able to have some slack in your timeline. If something comes up, if you get sick, if an opportunity appears, you'll be able to sort of be flexible with your schedule and you won't be like rushing and going crazy. So do yourself that favor. And yeah, you may also need a budget. It's totally okay as a cartoonist to ask for money to cover your rent and your personal expenses and stuff, because as far as writing goes, and like comic making is pretty cheap as a discipline. I mean, you need paper and ink and stuff, but it's pretty basic. What the grant is actually paying you to do is to take the time and to not have like 20 other jobs you're doing, but just to be able to focus on your project. So it's totally okay to say like, hey, most of this grant is an artist fee. It's going to keep me alive. And then we'll have a wonderful, you know, comic at the end of it. That's fine. Okay. So I'm going to move on and just recommend you some programs. There's a ton of stuff you can look up, but I'll just to get you started. Oh God, my throat's really dry. Sorry, one sec. Okay. So I would recommend, you know, the Toronto Arts Council Writers Program, which is due in June 25th. So if you start an application now, if you have an idea right now, you have time to apply. Think about it. The OAC recommended grants for artists. That one has various deadlines. That is a very interesting program, and I would recommend, out of all of these, I would say look that one up. Just because the recommender grants are this thing where the Ontario Arts Council gives money to a lot of smaller publishers in Ontario. And then each of those small publishers picks artists that they like and gives them funding to do their projects. And they have to give most of the funding to artists that they don't personally work with. So you don't have to be published or be like in with anybody. And as an interesting thing, it's a really good start. It's a really good starter grant if you've never had a grant before. And it's a grant that you can be awarded several times at the same time. So like if you put your pitch out to several publishers and all of them like it and all of them want to give you money, you can take all of that money. It doesn't cancel out. So probably I would super recommend that one. And the Canada Council is a bit confusing because they don't have discipline-based grants anymore. So nothing's going to be for comics. Things are going to be just, for research and creation, or for publishing something, or for traveling to do an art thing. So so that one is a bit sort of loose, but they're kind of cool too, because there is no deadlines, just you have to hand it in before you start. And it's actually like a really big grant. It's $25K. You will need to give them a really detailed budget that it says, you know, this much is for paper, this much for pencils, this much is for my tablet or computer, whatever, and this much is like food, rent, whatever. You'll have to be very, very exact. But that one's actually really good. If you're gonna apply to the Canada Council, give yourself about an extra month, because you're going to have to go on their website and get your profile approved before you can send in your pitch. So they check your history and your examples and stuff, and your CV and stuff before you can hand in anything. So that takes about a month. So I realize some of you are probably not in Toronto or in Canada, but just make sure you look up at every government level what arts organizations apply to where you do live. And a lot of the applications are going to be very similar. They're going to ask you for similar sort of things. So, okay. And sorry, I'm just looking at the time, making sure I'm not late. Oh, okay, no, we're okay. I'll give you a few more resources of things you can Google and try. And At the end of the chat, I'll just give you like a bunch of links and stuff. So you should be okay. I really like this thing called Papercat Press, which is a list of contests and jobs and calls for submissions. So if you don't have enough publications to get started, this is a really good place to look for anthologies, for contests, and for things like that, so that you can get your experience in and get your portfolio ready. So that's a good place to go. And consider that there's a bunch of grants that are not given by the government at all. They're given by, you know, comic festivals or like tiny publishers or small businesses or all kinds of things. So just, you know, keep an ear to the ground. And I think it's kind of a good moment to say, you know, get to know your peers. And any cool opportunity you see, share it with them. And, you know, you should like just try and like, because then if you're all researching together and sharing opportunities together, then like you're moving forward as a team and as an industry. You know, you can compete with the quality of your project, but like don't compete by like withholding information. Like you're better off always sharing all that business info with all of your cartoonist people. You will get way further ahead. It's totally worth it. So please always share if you find something really great. And also, if you're not aware of creatorresource.com, you should probably go on it. It just has a lot of general info for freelancers and cartoonists and stuff. Stephanie Cook runs it. It's a really good website. So do check it out if you're not familiar. Right. So some other cool programs. I would recommend this thing called Q-Art Projects if you're in Toronto. So Q-Art Projects helps brand new artists. They do micro grants that are about $1,000 each. And they actually coach you through the grant writing process. So before you send them your pitch, they actually look at it and correct it and help you like learn to do these things. And then you can pitch to them. They're very nice people. They work with BIPOC creators and they work with LGBT plus creators. It's for younger people. I think you have to be 29 or under. But if that's you, 1,000% talk to these people. They will help you so much. As a funny thing, like John Fluebog Shoes has a grant for some reason. You know, Gumroad has a creators fund, which is just like a Google application. It's very straightforward, just like, who are you? How much money do you need? What are you going to do with it? That's basically it. You know, there's like small presses, like Perfectly Acceptable Press, who have small grants for like small print runs and stuff. I think this one is for risograph based projects. So if you're like a zine kind of person, this could be like a good thing for you to look out for. And, you know, here in Toronto, the Canada Comics Open Library has a small residency. That's actually really cool as well. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that are not just government grants. And a lot of them operate yearly. So something that happens all the time is that, you know, you sit down, you start looking at grants, and for some reason, every deadline you see was like 2 weeks ago. It's like this horrible magic thing. So if you've missed a deadline, just take a calendar and make a note of it. Because like a year is actually a really short time. And if you start making notes of like every program that you see and every deadline that you see, then pretty quickly, whenever you have an idea, there's going to be something on the horizon you can apply to. So yeah, that's actually is definitely worth it. Write these things down. And, you know, grant guidelines change from year to year, but generally they're pretty similar. So even if you're like 6 months away from a deadline, you can see what they asked for last year and start getting your pitch ready if you want to be like really proactive. So yeah, so that's that kind of sums up in general the things I wanted to cover. So I'll just I have like a too long didn't read. So in general, if you fell asleep, this is all you need to know. So grant writing is really good to learn for the money and for your skill set. And it's worth it even if you get rejected. If you do get rejected, don't feel bad. No one's going to hold it against you in the future. No one's even going to remember. Like, these people get hundreds of pitches. So seriously, no one's going to know if you screw it up. And yeah, so just keep learning. Try again. I think I should probably tell you, like, in the past couple of years, I've been able to really start my career through grants and get like a number of them and do really awesome stuff. But I think I had 19 grant rejections before I got any successes, like, at all. So don't feel bad. It's okay. You just need to keep trying and keep growing as an artist. It will be fine. When you do write a grant, use clear language, follow the guidelines. But when you're deciding what information to include, you are actually telling a story. So you're saying that this is a great comic that should exist in the world right now, and I am the best person to make this comic. So all your support material, your bio, your pitch, everything you hand in needs to come together to deliver that, like, message. So that's your goal, really. And yeah, if you don't feel confident, you know, grants are meant to help you grow. So don't feel bad. It's okay to keep learning. Like, just try it. Don't worry about it. As an extra thing, grant organizations always have grant officials, which are people whose job it is to answer your questions and to help you apply. So you can email them, you can call them. They want to help you and they want you to succeed as much as, like, you do. So even if it's like a very intimidating website with very serious business language or whatever, they're generally very nice people, and you can ask questions to make sure that you have your application, like, done correctly and stuff. So don't be afraid to reach out to them. So yeah, so that's basically what I wanted to cover. Obviously, we can do some questions now. So yeah, give it your best shot. That handle there, that LSZIAN, that's my Instagram handle. If you have further questions, you can message me. I would be happy to speak with you further. Yeah, best of luck. Give it a try. It's totally worth it. And yeah, that's basically it. I'll stop screen sharing. And there we go. We're back.
Hello again. That was great.
Hi.
We do have a nice handful of questions from the audience that we'll go through. We got a nice amount of time to get through all of these, I think. So the first one I'll start with was from Sarah, who was wondering how recent a published book should be to be counted in your application. They gave an example that they were hired for as a book illustrator in 2017. Is that too late?
Hi, Sarah. That's totally fine. That is 100% okay. So, if you have, as you grow, if you have several books and stuff, definitely you want to sort of lean towards picking your most recent material. But like a couple years is absolutely fine. And if that book is your best publication, include it for sure. If it's relevant to the next book you're doing, for sure, that's totally okay. It's not too late at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have at least a 10-year window, yeah. And even then, especially if it's relevant. Ella asks, do grants apply to illustrators who don't usually make comics, but perhaps sell commissions or have illustrations in other publications?
Cool. So grants do apply. It might be a little different for you because then that means you might have to apply through the visual arts stream as opposed to the writing stream, unless you're making like narrative stuff. But visual arts has very similar programs where you can apply to do like a series of illustrations. If you're going to do, if you can find like a small venue and like say, I'm going to do an exhibition, or I'm going to do this like website with this really interesting body of work. All of that is stuff you can apply for. So yeah, don't worry at all about it. It's perhaps different research, but the same granting bodies will apply to you. So you can definitely try it. Yeah, that's okay.
Awesome. Claudio asks, would anthologies be considered as published works? So would that be would that meet the requirement of having a published or paid work?
Yeah, generally, yeah. So that's actually how I got in. Thank you, TO Comics. Shout out to Andrew Stevenson. Thank you, bud. But yeah, so anything at all, as long as you didn't make the whole book yourself, and as long as you were paid for it, even if you were paid $1, it counts. That's totally cool. You can use it.
Yeah, for sure. And any anthology or even if it's an excerpt of your book, I would probably include as in a line on your CV or artist bio. Archie asks, I have a lot of trouble doing cost-benefit analysis for my grant writing. How can I decide how many hours per month I should be spending on grant writing when I have no way of actually estimating the chances of receiving a grant?
That's fair. Oh, that's a good question. I think, I think especially if you're starting out, it's pretty bold to say, if I put in this many hours, for sure I'm gonna get a grant. It's hard to just expect that. So honestly, what I would say is expect to screw up a couple of them before you get one. And it's more, think about the value of it, not really as a money thing. I mean, even though money's great, rent is so good to have paid. But think about the fact that, let's say you don't get a grant and you're still gonna make the project. You're still going to need to know a timeline. You're still going to need to be able to talk about it, to pitch it to people. So all the things that you're going to do in order to hand in a grant, you're actually going to have to do them anyway if you want your project to actually succeed. So I guess think about it that way if it feels like a weird extra chore.
Yeah, and I would even say that the experience of doing the grant is a worthwhile investment because it will give you an idea of how long it takes you to do. Yeah. And I've always found that grants take me a lot longer than I think they're going to take me when I'm planning out my week.
Yeah.
Naheen asks, how do you answer the artist career development question? They found that most grants have this question for some reason.
Sorry, the artist career development?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think, yeah.
So that's kind of, that's kind of part of the story thread that you're trying to put through your grant. So for career development, you're trying to say, hey, if this project came to life, right, then, how would that benefit you in terms of how would your body of work be better? And what opportunities would be open to you, say, if you have a finished book versus not having a finished book. So it's sort of think of this project, how is that a building block for your overall artist career? But yeah, so it's sort of it's maybe think about opportunities that will open for you and sort of new ways that it will complement your other work to make it more solid and to make you a more solid artist as a whole. So maybe that is kind of the way.
Yeah, it's also maybe another storytelling avenue, you're telling the story of your growth as an artist, and try to think of maybe examples in your practice of I've even if it's small things like watching tutorials or online participating in sessions like this. I think all of those things can definitely count in a grant. Take any nugget of information you can spin into some gold, I think.
For sure.
Isabel has a bit of a technical question, which
Okay.
is if you have a writer's profile on CCA, which is the Canada Council for the Arts,
Mhm.
for those who may not know, can you still apply for a grant as a writer if you're at the drawing stage of a project?
Oh, that's really interesting. Um, I think you should be able to. I think if you're at the drawing stage and you're gonna have a finished book by the end of it, then maybe you need to change your program. So instead of the research and creation stream, if you already have your concept ready, you might want to look into the concept to realization, which is it's a different grant. The only difference is that at the end of that grant, you have a finished artwork that you're gonna show someone. So it might just be a different program, but I think you should be able to apply for something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd reach out to the program officers on that as well.
Yeah,
If
for sure.
you're thinking about where you are, but the whole idea of what the Canada Council's reorganization was a few years ago was to make it less disciplinary and more
Yeah.
about what stage you are in the project. So, yeah.
And I'll
Archie,
make an extra. Oh, sorry, I'll just make an extra note. The cool thing about the Canada Council not having disciplines anymore is that if you have an insane project that is half comics, half music, half spoken word, or some insane idea, you can pitch that. So yeah, so there's room for those hybrid projects as well. Just have a good look around because there's probably something that will fit like any situation. They're expecting weird stuff because artists are weird. So yeah.
yeah, I think actually they want weird
Yeah.
interdisciplinary work now.
Yeah.
I think they have a real appetite for that. Archie asks, when creating a budget, how should you account for, hopefully, finding a publisher when there isn't a publisher currently lined up? Or should you even include that
Right.
as an expense?
Um, well, I think you might want to include sort of things around that because finding a publisher, I mean, writing cover letters and sending that stuff doesn't technically cost you anything. But maybe you want to, put a line in your budget for like a little bit of extra time that to say, I'm going to spend a week doing this stuff. Or to say, for example, something you can definitely put in your budget is like hiring a really good editor who will independently come in and help you polish your project so that when you send it to publishers, it actually looks like incredible. That's the kind of thing you can actually put in your budget. Because you can't really put in your budget, oh, get a yes from a publisher because you don't know that you're going to get that. You don't want to be on the hook for that.
Yeah, for sure. Ricky asks, as a writer, if I work with an international artist, am I still eligible for grants?
I believe. Ooh, interesting. I'm not sure. I believe so. I think you might be eligible for your expenses, but not from
Yeah.
theirs because part of the requirement for a lot of the government stuff is that you have to be a resident of the area um, to qualify for grants. Like you can't apply to Toronto grants if you're in Waterloo. Like they have their own thing. So yeah, so you can probably apply for your own stuff. You could argue that you're asking for money so that you can pay them for the illustration. Maybe that's the way to swing it. But
Yeah. In general, the art councils, like if you can find a Canadian artist that you want to work with, then they extra love it, but they do pay
yeah,
for international art fees. Yeah, to make your project the most attractive, I would try to work with Canadians or other artists in your region if you're, say, applying for an Ontario grant. But definitely international expenses are eligible, and also depending on where they live, they also might be able to apply for funding.
that's true.
Like if they're in, say, the UK, I know they have a very robust program as well. I think still got time for a few more.
Yay.
Jason asks, should you resubmit the same pitch even after it was rejected in a prior year?
Ooh, that's a really good question. If it's the exact same pitch and you haven't changed it at all, it might not be worth your time. I think if the project has evolved, and if you've looked at sort of maybe why it wasn't so attractive, and it like the idea has evolved, and like, you know, if it's this, like if it's almost like a new project that's like grown, then like, yeah, try it. Like, I mean, what do you have to lose, right? But sending the same thing over and over, probably not worth it, and probably not worth it for you, because you wanna keep growing as a creator. It's not just about getting grants, it's about actually being a viable professional. So yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely polish up the pitch as well. Like whenever, TCAF also had many unsuccessful grants in the beginning of our granting program. And, you take some core things that you think you did well and, repackage it quite a bit where you can, rephrase. Every year there's a different jury that's going to be looking at your thing. So there can be some variability there as well. Ella was hoping that you could expand a little bit more on the value of Papercat Press.
Oh yeah, oh god, I love Papercat Press. So Papercat Press is just every week they publish like a gazillion links, and I mean some of them will apply to you and some of them won't. But it's just a good place if you want to hear about anthologies that you might want to participate in. If you want to hear about maybe conventions that you might be interested in, or like weird like illustration gigs that someone's hiring, like, oh, someone needs like an inker for this project, they might post on it there. It's just like a massive free listing. So if you're sort of short on information, it's just kind of like a good place to start your research and sort of go from there.
Awesome. Jeannie asks, could a previously self-published work be submitted to a publisher to publish?
That varies on the publisher. So some indie publishers are gonna say, hell no, even if it was just on your blog, I'm sorry, no, forget it, go away. Some people are very happy to publish like existing webcomics and stuff, as long as you take them off the internet. So I think that's gonna depend from publisher to publisher. You'll have to read their guidelines, and if they don't say either way, like send them an email. It doesn't hurt. It's usually just a friendly person on the other side who in 5 minutes could clear that up, and then you don't have to apply without knowing if you're even eligible.
Yeah, and I would say publishers are looking for sure bets wherever they can. So if you have a self-published work that you have really good data on, especially like I sold 2,000 copies of this book, that's an incredible number. Even like 800 is an incredible number. And anything that you can prove that you have an audience that you can bring, people who might even rebuy that book, that's really gonna help you out.
For sure.
And I think we got time for one more, then we'll wrap it up, which is, do you know, it's from Archie again. Do you know if there's anywhere with great examples of successful grant applications? It'd be really great to see somebody else's work.
I don't think a lot of people actually publish their grant applications. That's not really, I don't think I'm aware of a place. I'm so sorry, Archie. That said, if you're not sure, talk to your peers. See if you can meet someone who's done one, and like they'll probably let you look at it. So yeah, that's maybe something where there isn't really a website, but like talk to people and see what you can find.
Yeah, most programs will have a public list of who was successful in that program. So if you see an artist that you admire in that list, and you can reach out to them with sort of hat in hand and be like, I'm looking for some help here. I think you might find some success that way. And even I have found that sometimes grant officers will share with you. They'll like take out a lot of the pertinent information, but will give you a sense of kind of what they're looking for in a program. And again, most art councils will do usually a fairly dry or stuffy presentation on kind of what they're looking for, but I might have to learn a little bit of what's in between those things. Any final words of wisdom from you, Lorena?
Oh God, wisdom. If I find any wisdom, I'll let you guys know. No, honestly, I think we kind of covered most of it. I guess I just really want to drive home the idea that it's worth a try, even if you don't feel very confident. It's good for you. It's good for you as an artist. It's good for you because maybe you'll get some money out of it. It is good for your project. Just try it. Don't worry about it. Just give it a go is all I'd want to say, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Well, thanks everyone so much for coming today to this session of Word Balloon Academy grant writing. I want to thank once again our presenting sponsor, Seneca College School of Creative Arts and Animation. They really helped out this year in a big way. Special thanks, of course, to the Beguiling Books and Art and Page and Panel, the TCAF shop. Special thanks for this session to our government funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Art Council, and the Toronto Art Council. I was very, very pleased when we finally got the hat trick of all those councils. And for Canadians, I will say that the Canada Council was the hardest one to get, and it still remains. I submit at least one application a year to the Canada Council that is not successful. And we are, they like us, which is nice. So,
yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, so it is a tricky thing. Please, if you have not visited it yet, go to torontocomics.com. We have an incredible exhibition site up for the rest of the week. We're featuring over 300 creators, along with our partners from the Toronto Hand-Eye Society's Comics X Game exhibition, as well as the Spring Canzine that's happening in conjunction with TCAF this year. Go there, click around. There's over 300 artists from all over the world. You can fill up your cart with goodies, check out once, pay for shipping once, wait very patiently as we get the logistics of that all sorted out. And probably by about the beginning of July, you'll have a great box of goodies at your door. Next for Word Balloon Academy is indie crowdfunding, another great way to raise money for your projects. That starts in just over half an hour at 3:30. You can find that session on torontocomics.com. If there's a little events tab, will bring you to the entire events listing, or go on the social media. I'm sure there'll be a link posted there very shortly. So yeah, once again, thanks so much everyone for coming, and I think we're good here.
Yeah.
Thanks again,
Lorena.
Lorena.
Thank you all so much. A pleasure to see you all. Thank you.
Yeah, happy TCAF, everybody.